These are the problems that we'll be looking at in terms of addition or subtraction on the number line. So we've got 4 additions with a mixture of positive and negative numbers, and then the subtraction ones involving, again, a mixture of positives and negatives. We'll be using this number line to assist us to do the additions and subtractions. The number line's set up so that on the right hand side we can see the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and as we add numbers we increase in our total. Subtraction actually reduces our total, and as we subtract we move to the left, and you can see to the left of 0 that we've got some negative numbers there, and they move in the opposite direction, so we've got -1, -2, etc. as we move to the left. Let's have a look at our first operation. It's 1 plus 2, which is a very simple one, but we'll have a look at how we use the number line to do this operation. We start with a counter on the number 1, so that's our first number. And if we want to add 2, it's a simple case of moving 2 units in the positive direction. So we can see here that we've moved from 1 and jumped 2 units, and of course the result for this one is 3. Our next problem is -2 plus 3. So in this case we've got the solution shown straight away. We start at the number -2. If we add 3, it means we move to the right 3 units, and we end up at the number 1. In this case it's 1 plus -3. Now this is the first slight difference in terms of the numbers that we're using, because we're dealing with a negative number here. So when we're adding a negative number, what we have to realize is that normally when we add we move to the right, but if we add a negative number we move in the opposite direction. So in this case we start with a counter at 1 and we move 3 units to the left, and that takes us to -2. Now a way to think about this is that you'll notice at the top right hand corner of the picture there's a plus and a minus next to each other. In other words, 1 add -3. If we combine those two signs we can make them into a negative, because 1 minus 3 moves us to the left. So if we've got a plus and a minus next to each other, as is the case here, that becomes a minus. So opposite signs together become a minus. Here's our next problem. It's 2 add -2. Now let's keep in mind what we just said. We've got an opposite case of signs together here, the plus and the minus. So we've got 2 as our start number. That's where the counter is. Normally when we add we move to the right, but because we're adding a negative we're going to be moving in the opposite direction, in other words to the left. So you can see here that we've moved 2 units to the left of 2, and that takes us towards 0. But again what's happened is if we have 2 add -2, we can combine the add and the minus to be a minus. So 2 signs together, different signs, opposite signs, becomes a minus, and 2 minus 2 is 0. Our next problem is straightforward, 3 minus 2. Now we know the result for that one's 1, and we can see on our number line here that if we subtract 2 units from the number 3, we move to the left and we move to number 1. The next one's -1 minus 2. Again, if we start our number line at -1 and move 2 units to the left, as we do with subtraction, we end up at -3. Slight difference with the next one in that we've got a combination of signs, a minus and a negative next to each other, so 2 minus -1. Let's keep in mind what we did beforehand, but this time the signs are the same, they're both minuses. Now on our number line we start at the number 2. If we subtract, we normally move to the left, but because we're subtracting a negative we move in the opposite direction, and that takes us towards the number 3. Now as a summary, we've got a minus and a minus next to each other. We can turn that into a plus. So 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. So in this case the signs next to each other are the same signs, and the result is we're adding. So in this case 2 take -1 is like 2 plus 1, and the result is 3. Here's our last operation. It's subtract. We've got -4 minus -6. So let's first of all think about this on the number line. We start at -4, and we're going to move normally to the left 6 units when we subtract, but because we're subtracting a negative we're going to be moving to the right. So in this case -4 take -6 will take us to +2. And if we think of what we said beforehand, if we're subtracting a negative, that's like adding. So it's really -4 add 6, and of course the result will be the same, will be positive 2.